I wanted to make a how-to video to how install my Fly-Zone Focke Wulf fw-190 landing gear repair kits. The kits that I sell include your main strut brace for the lower part right here, which is a two-piece. Looks like this. Comes in two pieces. It's actually super glued together and it holds quite well. Second piece is your upper strut brace, which incorporates the shock together. This one is also super glued on. It is quite a tight press fit, so it works pretty well, but I always recommend that you put a little drop of super glue on it to hold it in place. The next piece that comes with the kit is the upper attaching point for the strut, where it goes to the wheel right here. This one just slips in place and is held in by the nut. And the third piece, the most common, is your hinge link, or the link that is used to extend the landing gear themselves. This part is just screwed in place with all your original screws. So the biggest reason for the kit, the how-to video, is because the installation of this deals with a little bit of super gluing and repairing. So anyways, so I'm going to go ahead and go over that. So some of the things that you might need, or that I've found that worked well, is first off your super glue. I use this Instacure. It's 5 to 15 seconds cure time. It gives you a little bit of time to work with. You can go with the higher ones if you feel like. The reason behind you can go with the highers is because they sell this Insta set, so you can just put a higher time on there and then move it around wherever you need it, and once you get it you can spray it and it'll lock it in. But I found the 5 to 15 works decent for what I do. Some of the other things I found that is good is the surgical pliers, the ones that lock in. They hold the actual upper strut together while it's drying. The lower strut together while it's drying. It's quite helpful. It's kind of like an extra hand. Some other things you might need. It's a little small #1 Phillips. Basically, it's for the attaching bolts. Attaching screws that hold all the parts together. Another one you might need is a socket setup, or like one of these little lug wrenches for RC cars, whatever, for the upper nut that goes to your wheel axle. And some other miscellaneous things you might need, but you should be okay without. Like I use some drill bits, but most of the kits, all the kits I send out, were already pre-drilled and ready to go. But just for gee whiz, the smaller of the holes, the ones that are for attaching your outer of your landing gear door, are 1/64. So these two right here are 1/64, as well as your spring attaching point is also a 1/64 as well, drill bit. So once again, all these are the factory screws, so they'll just screw right into those holes. And yeah. Some of the larger holes that you'll deal with is 5/64, which is these two right here. These smaller ones that are for your little hinge rod arm that comes through. And then your larger one is going to be a 1/32, which is this guy right here. And that just depends. Sometimes you might need to send it a little bit bigger. But like I said, I usually pre-fit all of mine. So I have a couple extra parts. I'll pre-fit them too to make sure they fit before I send them out. And then the final one is for the upper strut. Not final one, excuse me, second to final. This is a 7/64, just to clean this area out. Like I said, should already be good to go. And then your final one is the inside of here. If you ever get yours going and it's just really hard to get in here to install, you can see I'm not even in yet, and I use a small hammer to tap this down to get it on there, so it's a very tight fit. So if you're ever just not comfortable with pushing it on that hard, that's alright. Just go ahead and get a 3/64 bit, send it down in here, and you can see it's pretty tight on the drill bit. Just kind of run it in and out a few times, and just be aware that there is a tapered edge on the top, like a little step. It's a different size, and that's the stopping point for that strut. So don't run the drill bit too far. Just kind of peek in here and watch it as it comes in, and you'll stop it just a smidge before. Those stop points that are on this one and this right here, those stop points are pretty crucial. I am going to go over the measurements of the distance between the lower strut and the center part, and then your center part and your upper one. I will go over the measurements because those are key to making your outer door fit, and it's also very important for it clearing the outer part of this wheel well. One other thing to keep in mind, as these struts get older and more beat up, especially mine, I have a few extras here, that coating starts to wear off. I'm not sure if it's just like a heavy duty paint or what, but I found that if you take a small piece of Scotch tape and put it on here one layer thick, it helps to fill that gap. This is a pretty good size right here, and like I said earlier, it fits pretty tight. But if you have one like looks like mine, some of mine, like I said, a little piece of tape around here helps out. And then also the final part with the glue. So don't forget to scuff these up if you have metal or however you're attaching it, just to give the glue something to bond to, or epoxy. So anyways, let's get started on the kit. One of the first things I'm going to assemble on this one is the upper strut mount to my strut itself. Don't forget to put your spring in, just straight down the middle. Once it gets going, the strut itself will actually push it into position. Make sure that you are facing the right direction. The attaching point is on the lower side of the strut, so that side goes to your base. So the closest to the little anchor point for the hinge. And then the longer side goes to the smaller. Okay. Once you get it going, this one is pointing down at the aircraft, or vice versa. For the aircraft it'd be facing up if it was in it, but for this application it's pointing down. And this, your upper anchor, is large part right here, which attaches the outer part of your door, points aft of the airplane or to the tail, and this slips on. Like I said, this is a tight fit, and it is 90 degrees to this point right here. So from here to here is 90 degrees. So press it on there, and if you look in here, I don't know if you can see that or not, that's the top of the strut. So for security reasons, I usually set on a little block of wood and give it a light tap. Make sure it's all the way down. I got it all the way down. I know it's at 90. Usually you can see still it moves a little bit if you get a hold of it. I like to test fit a lot of the stuff in here. So I don't glue this until I'm 100% done. So we'll set that aside for now. The center brace attaches through the screws. There's one shorter screw and one longer screw. The longer screw fits into the countersink and attaches to the strut. All these parts are left and right, except left and right specific, except for your top brace and except for your wheel brace. These are not specific. You can just flip them over, go either side. Like I said, these are specific to left and right, as well as these. Usually when I attach these, I will run them down lightly until they bottom out. Once you feel it bottom out, nothing crazy. I back it off about a half a turn and see how it feels. And it's still a little tight. You go a little farther. As long as you have ample clearance for this screw head when it swings down inside of here. If you need to go a little tighter, if you need to clean up this a little bit more, that is it's actually your 7/64. We'll run that countersink hole just a smidge deeper if you need to. Yeah. We'll set that one ready to go. One other thing I like to do prior to putting on is I actually install this spring before I even try and glue this thing on, because this spring, once you get this in place and glued in, it is a pretty pain to get in there. You're trying to hold everything and you end up trying to pull this spring over, and usually you'll slip, or I have slipped in the past, and it sends that little screw flying. So instead of dealing with that, I usually just pop it off. Install it in here, like that. Hold on to my finger, and I don't be yanking on the spring, because that's how it'll get you in trouble. So then I grab this lower strut brace, and just lightly screw it in there. And this one you don't have to smoke it down, you're pretty much just going to run it to the point where it's got a hold of it, you know. It's still not quite bottomed out, but as long as it has ample clearance for everything, it should be fine. So, once I have all that ready to go, we'll do the upper strut real fast. So this one just slips over the top, the strut itself. When you get that over there, you just align your hole to your actual the metal part of the strut. And then you're going to take it, and the wheel side goes on the metal. So it'll slip through like that. So plastic part is on the outside, and axle is on the inside with the metal. Take your nut, slip it on, do a lug wrench, whatever you got. Give this a little. I've lost these cruising on the runway a time or two, so make sure you tighten those. Or if anything, put a little Loctite on them to help them out. Once you have that on there, no worries. You can put these together. I always like to orient these screw heads out, so that way, excuse me, it's this way. That way I can put them on and off with everything assembled like that for the wheel and strut. So I usually have these temp installed like that and take it to the point where there's a good amount of clearance in there. Slip it over that. Run that down. Okay, so it's a little tight. So once again, just like the lower, tighten it up and back it off about a quarter. You know, kind of get it to where you feel right. And don't forget to make sure that this angle looks correct. I don't have the exact angle, but there's a stopper in here. You know, if you need to clean up a little bit of this, these are flippables, what's nice. So if you bust one off, you flip it over and put it on another side. You know, at least get you by for the time being until we get a new one to you. But there's a little stopper right here that it bumps against. So make sure it's, when it bumps against it, this flat portion is flush to the strut. That's meant to sit up against that upper part of the strut. So once you get that on, take this, slip it down inside your strut housing, roughly aligned. Keep in mind you can blow your string at the bottom, but just make sure it stays in there. Hold it in place. And once again, run this guy down, paying attention that it's not binding. Sometimes this will hit and you'll start to see these pieces spread apart. Just back the screw off until they seat again or until they come back together, and try again. And obviously just make sure that your alignment is good with the hole. So run this guy down until it stops, back it off a little bit, and check out the actuation of it. Looks pretty good. So full extend, put your spring up in there. Like I said, mine's a little worn out. They've seen better days. They've been installed and removed several times with this. Now we got everything ready to install. So I usually clean this up with a flat piece of wood or a flat piece of metal and some sandpaper, just to make sure that these are squared up very nicely to each other. And that way it gives the super glue something to adhere to. You don't have to go crazy with the super glue on these either. The glue seems to be holding very, very well. So I'll put a small amount here, and a tiny amount in here. And once you're ready and you got your strut in a good spot, I pull the strut out a little bit, apply some glue, and send it back in, and that helps to really hold all of this together. So first step into getting this in there, taking this, dropping it in here. And it doesn't really stay the best when you're first doing this, and this is where you'll start to find out that the needle nose, well, I call them needle nose pliers or whatever you want to call them, but the surgical pliers come in handy, because for me, I can't even get my fingers under these things. So check fitment prior. And so what I've been doing is, now the spring's going to fight me on this way. It's okay. So I just place both of them in like that, align the top strut, the hole, and take my pliers, facing them upward, tighten them down just to the first click. And I move it in and out, making sure it works well. If its spring cannot pull that back down, then you may have too much material inside of here. Like I said, normally I clean them up with drill bits, stuff like that. So I'll take a 7/64 bit, or even one size bigger. If you got a little bit of debris on that shaft, double check it, clean it up, make sure, like with sandpaper or an X-Acto knife, you can take it and kind of scratch it off if you find some debris on there. Sometimes I've seen like glue on there, but for the most part they come out pretty clean. So if you need to, clean up in there. And so when you're at this point, verify that all your seams are good and everything looks squared up and true, nothing's binding. If all that's good, then you know you're ready to glue it together at that point. You can even test fit your strut down in there if you want, like that, just to kind of get an idea of what you're dealing with. And you see this one's not too bad of a fit. It's missing a little bit of the coating. So, but some of the brand new ones, or ones that are in good shape, actually fit pretty good in here. And if you find that it's too tight, that's when that 3/16 bit comes in. You take it down in here, and you have to hold them together with your surgical pliers. Obviously take all this off, hold it in your hand, and run it through there, and be very careful with it, because if you start to dance, if they start to go over top of each other, your holes will get offset, and you can start to actually damage the holes. I'm trying to see if I have another one. So here's just an example of another one. Helps if I have the right side though. So here's an example. So if, for say, that hole isn't quite enough, you'll notice that you'll have a small gap in it. It's hard to explain on the camera, but if that's the case, take these two, get your surgical pliers, line them up, make sure all the holes are aligned. Let me take a little bit. These are some of my old ones, so they're a little used up. They've actually been installed and removed. And go ahead and take your drill bit and run it down in here and just clean that out. So this one's already been cleaned out pretty good. So yeah. If you found that you've done it a little too much and you're like, oh man, I just went too far. Not the end of the world. The glue will help, but another thing that I found if I ever went too far is I take that block of wood and usually some 220 sandpaper. That's a pretty poor excuse of sandpaper, but I'll lay it on a block of wood, a nice clean flat surface, and hold the sandpaper in place and just do like X patterns with it, circles, squares, stuff like that, to try and get it back squared again. It'll actually remove a little bit of the material, and it'll help it to actually crimp down more on the strut itself. So yeah, just little tips to help you guys install these things if you ever come across anything. So alright, so once you have the fitment all determined and you know that everything is ready to go, and like I said, once the spring pulls it back down on its own, and then you're ready to glue. Take everything back apart, Like I said, one of the other things I found, I forgot to mention, was that the outer edges sometimes need to be cleaned up just a little bit. I usually just take a flat piece of wood and a sandpaper and just clean them up a little bit. You'll find that that might be one of the things that binds it when it swings on top of the material in the middle. So just gee whiz again. Mine are a little worn out. They've been through a lot of uses, so some of the stuff and the tolerances aren't quite as factory as they used to be, or original, whatever you want to call it. So ready to do this. So we're going to get our glue. Make sure that it's cleaned out, it works. Get a little test strip on here. There we go. Once you know it's good, apply a little bit. I usually stick more to the outside at first, and then a little bit along this edge, trying to keep it out of the channel for the strut, and then for the pivot point. Same thing with over here. We're going to glue in here later on. Once again, these surgical pliers are quite nice to start with. Take it, go up with it, and you probably will get a little bit of super glue on the shaft, the pivot shaft. And it's okay. I've had to do that before, and you can move it through it and kind of wear it off. So once you get it in, make sure that your upper strut will fit, your actual strut itself will fit before it all dries. So you may have to kind of move it around and work it down in there. We're not really worried about its length at this point. We're just worried about getting it in there and helping our alignment and making sure that everything still moves freely. So as long as the spring still pulls it down, you know it's still good. Sometimes to help you out, a little needle nose, actual needle nose vice grips on this outer side. Or even if you guys have some like wood clamps, anything like that, just to help lock down everything. We're not trying to smash it, we're just trying to hold everything together while the glue forms. You just keep moving it back and forth just to make sure that the glue didn't bind. I had a tiny bit of glue hit that pivot point, so I'm just making sure that it's not holding it. Then kind of let it cure up, and you can take your glue spray, your Instacure, just spray a little bit down in there to help lock it in. It'll help the glue take off. So, and this guy's still free floating at that point. If you notice, I was telling you guys earlier, I don't glue the upper. I don't glue this upper one, and I don't glue this shaft until I'm ready to go, because you have to determine your distance from this point to that and upper point from here to here. That's crucial for the actual door itself, where the screws fit on it. So in the meantime, while we let that dry, we will put, and you can let it sit and dry if you want, it doesn't really matter, but I'm just going to go ahead and put the lowers on. This lower screw right here. That guy right there. So this is the shorter of the two screws. The longer one's on top, shorter's on bottom. Once again, mine's a little worn out. This guy's actually worn out. And noticing that, I think I might print some of these. Believe it or not, I have had these break. Still working on ways of landing better, because I'm not awesome at it. So if any of you guys ever break these and you're like, man, my gear is toast, don't worry. You actually can take those out. If you come over to this one. If you come over here and look at this one, I've actually replaced this one. I've had this one all the way out, just this brace right here. I cut a hole right here, if you see. I'll give you guys some dimensions. It doesn't look awesome, but it doesn't look bad, I think. So this was first try. I had pretty good luck with it. I figured I'd measure this and show you guys. About 46, 47. And this is from that seam. If you see, there's a seam built in here. One of the original aircraft seams, they call them, or whatever you want to call it. I started at that point about I guess a little under parallel from this little niche right here. So you can see that. So that seam is about 32, and I don't have a straight edge handy, but you can see I'm just a little off. So I'd guess, you know, about 6-7 mil. So I made mine about 46, 47, and this is just an access hole that I made to get in there by about 30, it looks like. And this was honestly me just winging it, 35. I just tried it first try and got lucky. So you can take this, cut it out, pull that out carefully as best you can, and get in there with a screwdriver. And you'll go under the wing, and you'll actually get to the base of this this arm. And you can take it off and replace it. So I actually had 2 of these planes at one point in time, so I was able to use parts from the other one and get this one going when I broke that. So, like I said, mine are a little worn out, seen better days. They've been on off quite a bit. So you'll kind of notice that my hole in here is seen better days. That's why I was kind of considering printing new ones. So, like I said, small screw is the one that fits on here. And just like all the other pivot points, you run it down until it bottoms out. If I can find it. And then you back it off a little bit. So mine's a little worn out, so a little bit of play. They're okay though. I still get the job done quite a bit there. So at this point, my super glue should be good to go. So we'll go ahead and pop all this stuff off. See how it's holding up on us. So you even can try and actuate this. Let's see how it does here. Okay. If you need to make any adjustments now, you can. See mine's kind of hanging up a little bit. Sometimes you can twist them and get them to align. Usually it's this upper one I twist to help it out. To get it to fall in and out in the right spot. And sometimes these struts can even bend. I got a couple of these that are bent. I've straightened them out, had decent luck at it. You know, if you got to replace them, it is what it is. But keep that in mind. Sometimes these being bent will obviously make it hit top or bottom in here. So, looks like that one closes down well. It's pretty well flush. And you take and put the right door on. And this door's a little beat up too. Of course, all my stuff's beat up. It fits over here like that. So, next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to get the alignment, the distance between here and, should me like get up in there. Tough to see with that black, but from the top point to here, we're going to get the gap, and this point to that point. So this one, my other gear, I already have set up and ready to go. So, give you guys some quick measurements here. I got about 27.5-ish, and these are going to really be dictated off of your upper cover. So this is all kind of roughly. So the lower one will almost set itself up on its own when you actuate the strut in and out because of that inner strut piece right there, the inner actuating link. It'll actually help slide the strut in and out to the right spot. So you start have binding after if you start have binding in the actuation, as this comes up after you've glued these on, you might be in the wrong spot for this part. So this may need to be extended or lowered. Keep that in mind. So like I said, I got about 15 here and about 27.5 roughly on those guys. And most time, like I said, it's based off of the holes on these to align to that and that, and it's also based off of your rod and your link. As you can see, this one's still a little loose and it moves ever so slightly in there, and that's another reason I don't glue this yet. I let this thing swing in and out to be able to make sure it's in the right spot and no binding. And it's still touching just a little there. It's okay. So, and this guy seems to be in the right spot. Not too high, not too low. just natural, right in the middle. A little bending. Oop, that's starting to come up. That's just because it's not glued in place. And that's kind of a good example of what will happen if it's not in the right spot. So like I said, we're not quite glued yet. So yeah. Sometimes if you gotta use a piece of tape, lock this in for the time being until you're trying to figure it out. That's okay. You know, just get it in the right spot. And then go ahead and put your glue on. So I like where it is. So I'm going to pull the strut up about halfway out of the lower strut mount, and I take and apply glue all the way around the strut on the point where the strut itself goes through the lower strut brace. And then I get a little high, a little bit up the actual part of the strut. And then I go ahead and put it back down in there. And while it's all still trying to cure, run it through again. And it's moving on us, of course. Make sure it's where it needs to be. Little set. You're good to go. Gotten this glued in, and our height has been checked. We're good to go. And you've actuated through, and you got your glue on, and everything's good to go. Then you can set your upper distance. I said usually your upper distance is dictated off this one. I have roughly, I think I said 27.5 on this upper from here to here. About 27.5. Let's see what we got on this one. Looks like we could stand to go out a little more on that one. Put this back up. And pretty tight fit. Not too bad right there. Drop it down. Take one of your screws. You may have to take these on and off a few times. Trying to get these to line up. No big deal with that. Run that through about halfway. Go ahead and find your hole in there. Cinch that guy on. Not anything tight, just lightly for now, because like I said, we're going to be going back on and off with it a few times. Did I lose my screw? No, I didn't. I'm just moving stuff. Take the upper, drop it through. And looks like we got lucky on that one. Cool. Well, looks like I don't have to move it much more than that. So I'll get both these guys. Just light tightness, nothing crazy. Pretty much bottom them out. There we go. And you can see how this pokes up just a little. That's because this upper strut mount is not glued in its spot. So, and it's also not the proper angle. So we can take this, turn it just a little bit, and that's this upper one moving. That's that upper guy moving right there. So you get your wheel perpendicular to the fuselage, so when you taxi it does well. And then you'll take and put a drop of glue in there. And this is usually where I glue the upper. It's a pretty tight fit, so you really don't have to glue it. If you want to just leave it open, so that way you can kind of remove it or adjust it down the road or whatever, that's fine. Like I said, those ones are pretty darn tight. I clean out my super glue here. Those guys are pretty tight. good fit. I'll clean out the little hole in my super glue. That's what happens when you leave the top off. Put a little drop. Nothing crazy. Just a little drop on it. A little spray. It's good to go. Okay. So, not too bad a fitment, especially for an old beat up door. This one broke in half and doesn't have the best fitment. This one's not too bad. This one actually fits okay on this side. But yeah, once you got all those in there, everything's glued in place. Go ahead and take it up and feel free to beat them up. We've had pretty good luck with them staying together. Quite a bit better than the originals. So yeah, give you an idea here. Everything's in there. What they look like. And then once they're up, what they look like as well. I've had a few people ask me how well these work using the delayed function and having them actually go slow instead of being real snappy. I posted a video a while back of it doing it. It seems to do alright. You just got to find that right speed that works good. Try and get to focus here. You got to find that right speed that works for yours, basically. So sometimes you can't go as fast as others. I've had two different of these, and said they were just a little tiny bit different between the two. And it's mainly from me using them, beating them up. But yeah, cool. If you guys got any questions, let me know. Post it on here. If not, RC Groups, old 82 Cutlass at RC Groups. And yeah, thanks again for watching. Bye.